is Mark Lovmo, and I'm a researcher of South Korean coins, a topic about which not too much information was available up until recently. But I addressed that lack of information with my recently published book. You can see it on the screen here. And what I'd like to do in this presentation is introduce you all to the Republic of Korea. This is South Korea. The Republic of Korea's first coin issues from 1959 up to the late 1980s, a period of time which I identify in my book as the era of development for that country's coinage. And I will be discussing the development of South Korea's contemporary coining industry over time with each of those coin issues also. Although Korea's history with coins goes back 1,000 years, and the majority of that history concerns that country's cast coins, you know, the round coins with the square holes in the middle you see in the top right there. My research is not about those coins, nor it is about the early machine-struck coins you see on the left, nor is it about North Korean coins. Mind you, the title of my book is South Korean Coins in the Era of Development. So if you are interested in some of these older cast coins, Mr. Han Yong-dal of Korea has published some of the seminal works, some of the standard works on the subject. You see them on the left in the middle there, and Mr. Upton-Velde and Hartill have both taken Mr. Han's research and rendered it in English and added some extra research to it. So if you are interested in those older pieces, you can refer to these sources. Okay, my research effort is not about those older coins. It is about South Korean coins, which date from 1959 to the present date. Therefore, these are very contemporary coins. South Korean coins appear, like many other countries' coinage, as either circulation coins or commemoratives, of course. The circulation coins have appeared in 9 different denominations, 3 of which have been demonetized, and 4 of the remaining 6 still circulate today. Overall, there have been a total of 18 different versions of the business strikes issued over the years, if one considers the changes in design and/or metal composition to these coins. If you haven't heard, there is currently an ongoing plan to remove circulation coins from South Korea's system of currency called the Coinless Society Plan. This initiative began in 2017, and the plan is still in implementation if the latest information I've read is correct. As for the commemoratives, South Korea's commemoratives from 1975 and later are notable for the fact that all of them have been produced entirely in Korea, from design to strike and every step in between, whereas some of the key steps in the minting process for the early circulation coins had to be accomplished outside of Korea. Lately, the Bank of Korea, which is the central bank of South Korea, has been releasing between 1 and 5 new commemorative issues every year for about the past 15 years or so. By now, there are a total of 54 South Korean commemorative coin issues that the Bank of Korea has authorized since 1971, according to their website. Okay, and in the next part here, I'd like to go over some of the research that I've done concerning those South Korean coins that emerged during this early development stage. You can see the first South Korean coins right here on the screen. These first coins were produced entirely at the United States Philadelphia Mint. These coins came into Korea's currency system after the economy of Korea had stabilized enough by the late 1950s and after the destruction of the Korean War for the country to make the reasonable decision to introduce coins for the first time since the Japanese occupation ended in 1945. These are what are known as the Hwan denominated coins. The Hwan was the name of the money used in South Korea from 1953 to 1962, and these coins were first issued in 1959. Maybe the designs for these coins originated from the Korean Mint and its artists, but all the subsequent steps in the minting of these coins took place, certainly in Philadelphia. The South Korean Mint at this point was only printing banknotes, so they had no ability to mint coins, hence the contract with the U.S. Mint. The U.S. Mint was fulfilling contracts for 4 other countries in 1959 and 1960, as well as producing hundreds of millions of coins for the U.S. government, so they were quite busy over there in Philadelphia in those years. Some of the notable information that I found in my research on these Hwan coins, at least for many coin collectors in Korea, was the numbers of coins produced, the mintages, and the breakdown of those numbers of coins produced by calendar year at the U.S. Mint. And you see them on the screen here rendered in red numbers. Although these coins were struck with 4292 and 4294 Korean era dates, which correspond to 1959 and 1961 in Gregorian calendar dating, The actual calendar years in which these coins were minted included not just 1959 and 1961, but also 1960 and 1962. In fact, of these 4 years, 1960 was the year during which the largest number of coins were struck, but still the United States Mint struck these coins in 1960 with that 4292 or 1959 date. Like I said, these facts were quite new to collectors of these coins, and I highlight it here in this presentation since this information seems to have gotten a lot of attention from South Korean coin fans when I first pointed it out in articles that I wrote online a few years ago. These coins were revalued or redenominated as a result of Korea's June 1962 currency reform under the military junta government that was running the country at the time. The 50 won and 10 won coins were revalued downward as 5 won and 1 won in the new won currency, which is now the currency of South Korea. And under the rules of the currency reform, the 100 won coin was completely removed from the currency system and gathered up and melted. But the copper nickel metal from these coins was reserved for use at a later date. The aftermath of the currency reform left South Korea with a confusing mix of different pattern banknotes as well as coins that had denomination numerals that did not reflect their new values in the new won denomination, as you see here on the screen. And in the early 1960s, there was a big demand for the smaller denominations in the economy. And because of these factors, the government wanted to expand and standardize the currency system. This meant that the government would have to replace this inconsistent money with either more imported banknotes from De La Rue in Britain. They could produce more notes locally, which they started to do. Or if they could mint coins locally in the new won denomination, that could certainly solve their problems too. So the Korean government got to work on a plan to produce new won denominated coins in 1965. But those plans did not exactly work out due to funding and organization efforts, and they had to postpone those plans until the following year. However, this period of time did result in the Korean government reviewing a series of pattern coins dated 1965 and 1966. According to the information that is available about these pattern coins, there appear to be 50 different types. 45 of them are dated 1965, and all of those have the design of that coin you see there on the left. They appear in denominations of 10, 5, and 1 won, and each denomination appeared in 5 different ratios of copper to zinc and 3 different diameter sizes. The example you see on the screen here is a 1 won pattern on the left there. The 1966 patterns appear in these 3 different designs and denominations you see here on the right. Korean numismatists have claimed that each of the 1965 patterns is unique. In other words, the total mintage is 45 or around that number. I've never come across any information on the numbers of 1966 patterns that were struck, but it appears that quite a limited number were made. So while the Korean government was not able to issue coins in 1965, they did put in sufficient efforts later in the year and in early 1966 to produce the very first small batches of 10 won, 5 won, and 1 won coins you see here on the screen. They started production in July 1966, and the coins were issued in August that year. Notable at this time was that the Korean Mint was not able to make its own coin masters, nor even able to sink its own working dies for these first won-denominated coins. Therefore, the Koreans had to import the working dies and collars that made these coins from the London metallist firm John Pinch's company. And by the way, John Pinch's was acquired by the Franklin Mint in the United States just 3 years later. And of course, the best laid plans don't always work out. And in this case, it was the metal composition for these first coins. They needed to be adjusted to account for the rising metals prices in the late 1960s due to various factors, such as demand generated by the Vietnam War and copper mining strikes in the United States. The first coin to be changed was the 1 won coin when it came out in aluminum starting in August 1968. That year, 1968, was also the first time that the Korean Mint began sinking and finishing their own working dies for coins. This was one of the South Korean Mint's very first steps in gaining more independent control over the various processes involved in minting coins. And they would continue to make more of these types of advances in the coming years, as we're about to see. A few years later, the Bank of Korea also decided to reduce the amount of copper in the 10 won and 5 won coins, again due to those rising prices for that metal. And they made the change halfway through the coining of these 1970 dated strikes. This is where we get the so-called bronze and brass varieties of the 1975 won and 10 won coins, although both are actually brass. 1970 was also the year the Korean Mint decided to get into the business of producing its own coining blanks. They built a factory for this purpose and imported the necessary equipment, and production of the blanks started that year and continued for about the next 11 or 12 years. But by the early 1980s, they shut down their coin blank production facility and have relied solely on private metals producers since then. The main metal producer, of course, is Pungsan Metals. Also in 1970, the government issued the 100 won coin. You see it on the far right there at the very end of the year in November. The introduction of that coin was an extension of the Bank of Korea's banknote to coin conversion program, where coins were to replace equivalent value banknotes. And this coin eventually replaced the banknote by the late 1970s. It was also around this time that the Korean government entered into an overseas contract to produce and sell their very first commemorative coins. These coins were supposedly designed in Korea, but the minting of them took place in Europe. Some were struck at the German state mints. A limited number of the gold coins were produced at the Paris Mint, and some of the coins were produced at the Gori and Zucchi jewelry factory in Arezzo, Italy. They were not initially issued in Korea, however. They were marketed and distributed mostly in Europe and North America by the numismatic marketing company Italcambio. These coins soon became highly valued in the Korean market, and they're still very popular today. By 1972, South Korea issued a 51 coin. You see it on the far right there. They planned to produce the 51 as an annular coin, a coin with a hole in the middle, but the Korean Mint was just not able yet to make such coins, so the coin was issued as a regular old round coin you see here on the screen. 5 years later, the Korean Mint was able to strike annular pieces, and these took the form of the country's first bus tokens in 1977. By the way, the engraving work for both the 51 and 100 won coins, as well as the production of their master hubs and dies, were the products of the Osaka Mint in Japan, because, of course, the Korean Mint at this time was not yet able to produce its own masters. But events would soon force a change to that situation. Right around this time, the Korean Mint found out that the Korean government, would be making drastic reductions in orders for coins. In these years, this was kind of a concern, since the Korean Mint's only real source of income was Korean government orders for coins and banknotes. So this drop in orders for coins really got the leadership's attention at the Korean Mint. To overcome this problem, the Mint's new director, its ninth director, a man named Chung Se-ung, quickly secured a foreign coining contract with Taiwan. The contract helped the Korean Mint overcome their potential revenue deficit that year, but it also allowed the Korean Mint future opportunities to mint more of Taiwan's coins, which they did, fulfilling almost yearly coining contracts in the multi-million-dollar contracts for Taiwan until the early 1980s. And it also established the Korean Mint as a mint that was open to completing coining contracts for other countries as well. And you can see the names of some of those countries in the bottom of the screen there. Even though the Korean Mint had landed this rather large Taiwanese contract in 1973, the Mint director was quite displeased with the fact that the Mint was still needing to import from other countries the vital pieces of tool steel, the master hubs and dies, for the minting of coins. So it appears at this time, the Korean Mint leadership got to thinking, if they could produce their own masters, it would help them respond better to not only Korean government orders for coins, but also to these overseas coining contracts and maybe pick up more business there. And if the Korean Mint could make their own masters, then maybe that would grant them better access to yet another possible revenue stream, that being commemorative coins. So they went to work on this goal. The Mint sent some workers to that famous medallic art school in Italy and its associated Italian state mint in Rome to learn relief engraving for metals and coins, as well as reducing lathe operations. For example, running a Janvier lathe. Director Jung and his brilliant young director of the Mint's Technology Research Center also took it upon themselves to travel around the world to various national mints to study the necessary requirements for producing masters. They were particularly interested in learning how to impart frosted devices and mirrored fields onto the faces of coins. So when all of these Mint employees returned to Korea, they got to work to produce the South Korean Mint's very first reduction punches for metals and coins. And the results of their efforts you can see in the form of these prototype coins here on the screen. So with this proof of concept that they could produce coins entirely on their own, even in proof finish, the Korean Mint went to work to make the country's very first completely domestically made coin, a copper nickel 101, issued to commemorate the 30th anniversary of liberation from the Empire of Japan on August 15th, 1945. Among the relatively large mintage of 5 million of these copper nickel coins, 2,000 of them were struck in frosted proof, which meant that it met that goal of making the country's very first proof coins too. Their efforts that year also resulted in the mint producing its very first silver proof medal, one for the commemoration of the Bank of Korea's 25th anniversary. You see it there on the right. Soon after their initial foray into commemorative coins, the Bank of Korea was soon asked to issue commemorative coins for the 42nd World Shooting Championships, a shooting competition that Korea won the right to host in September 1978. Being rather new to creating masters for coins, the Korean Mint appeared to have wavered in their confidence to produce the dies and for these coins, and they almost asked the Japanese to do it. But after putting in a full-out effort, it all worked out in the end, and Korean-made master dies were indeed used to make these coins. The 5,000 won coin of the series, the larger of the two you see here, was such a popular coin that its scheduled release caused a minor to medium-sized disturbance in front of the Bank of Korea building on the morning of its first day of issue. The smaller 500 won coin was the first South Korean coin to appear in 3 different surface finishes: mint, unfrosted proof, and frosted proof. A few years later, a new presidential administration came into office after President Park's assassination in 1979. Quite pleased with themselves, this new government soon asked that the Bank of Korea issue coins to commemorate the inauguration of their new administration. The result was the 3-coin issue of the Fifth Republic inauguration commemorative coins. I believe the Bank of Korea calls them the birth of the Fifth Republic commemorative coins, but same thing. All 3 of these coins appear in those 3 different surface finishes: mint, unfrosted proof, and frosted proof. Then something very exciting and special happened for South Korea in the early 1980s. The capital city, Seoul, won the right to host the 24th Summer Olympic Games for the year 1988 in the International Olympic Committee's vote of September 1981. So the government of Korea asked that coins be issued to commemorate the first anniversary of Korea's win in that vote the year before. This was the first time ever that a country had issued coins to commemorate winning the bid to host the Olympic Games in the IOC vote. A little unusual, but they went with it. The first of these coins were issued in late 1982. Those are the first 3 coins you see on the left here. And because of the very strong sales for these coins in Korea, they produced a second issue of these Olympic bid coins, but these coins were not as popular as the first set. In these earlier years, the issuing authorities in Korea seem to have struggled with the idea that issuing a limited number of commemorative coins was a main driver of the popularity of such coins in the coin market. They did eventually figure that out, but it seems to have been decades later. It was also around this time the government standardized the design of all the nation's circulating banknotes and coins. The first of the coins to appear in this new standardized scheme was the first 500 won business strike in 1982, which of course replaced the previously circulating banknote. This was the last coin denomination added to this current system of money in Korea, by the way. And in the following year, all the 5 existing coins began to appear in this new consolidated design scheme that was meant to update, simplify, and standardize the appearance of the coins. In 1984, Pope John Paul II visited Korea on Easter Sunday to confer sainthood upon Korean martyrs of the early Korean Catholic Church, and their government issued commemorative coins for this event. These are the lowest mintage South Korean commemorative coins of the 1980s, by the way. And the following year, the government asked that the Bank of Korea issue a series of coins to commemorate the upcoming 10th Asian Games, which Seoul had won the right to host for the year 1986. Now, all during the late 1970s and early 1980s, the Korean Mint had made some very good advances in independent coin production. For example, they had trained a sufficient number of relief engraving artists and other technicians in the production of master dies. The Mint had also installed higher tonnage coining presses that could better bring up the relief designs on larger commemorative coins and medals. There were also many other improvements as well. However, because the Korean government saw the upcoming Olympics as an opportunity to enhance the country's international prestige, The leadership of the Bank of Korea believed it was necessary to make some final technical advances in the area of producing even higher quality commemorative coins for the Seoul Olympics. This was because the Korean government intended to sell the majority of the precious metal coins from this series to buyers outside of Korea. Therefore, the Korean Mint sort of used this 10th Asian Games commemorative coin project as a kind of field test to prove that they could produce such quality coins and in that quantity that they wanted to produce them. Their final step in increasing the quality of their coins during this 10th Asian Games coin project was to partner with a German-based private mint that had been responsible for creating the dies and collars that had made the 1980 Moscow Summer Olympics coins. With advisement from this German private mint, the resulting coins were arguably the best quality Korean commemorative coins produced up to that time in the form of these 10th Asian Games coins. These coins provided proof that the Korean Mint was indeed ready to produce and issue their all-important Seoul Olympics commemorative coins. And of course, South Korea issued the Seoul Olympics coins soon after, beginning in February 1987. The series was composed of 32 different obverse designs, 28 of which appear in both mint and frosted proof, making for a total of 60 coins, if you take into consideration both the mint and frosted proof versions. Therefore, the Seoul Olympics coins remind one of the rather large Olympics coin issues of the 1970s. These coins were very popular upon their issue in Korea, with over 90% of them having sold during the initial sales periods, which is impressive considering they were sold in 4 issues in Korea over a period of almost 2 years, and in a country where the concept of commemorative coinage was still sort of a new concept. However, sales for the gold and silver coins allotted for sale outside of Korea were not so great. It turns out that the overseas marketing companies that sold the gold and silver coins were only able to sell about 30% of their share of these precious metal coins outside of Korea, and they soon got the Korean government to buy back their unsold stock of silver and gold coins. Despite the disappointing overseas sales, from what I have been able to gather, these coins were a net contributor to the Seoul Olympics funding effort, and I think that the coins themselves turned out very beautiful indeed. Incidentally, this might have been one of the last times that surcharges from commemorative coin sales were to figure as an important part of the funding formula for an Olympic Games. Since 1988, other general merchandising articles, television broadcast rights, and emblem usage rights fees simply made more money. It's not that Olympics commemorative coins were not popular after 1988. It's just that those other things just started to make more money for Olympic Games held after 1988. The story of the era of development for the purposes of my research ends with the 1988 Seoul Olympics commemorative coins, since that commemorative coin issue represents everything the Koreans had been working up to that point. For example, the independent manufacture of their coins, and the production of high-quality mint and proof coins, and in relatively large quantities that could compete in the international market with other nations' high-profile coin issues, such as Olympics coins. Korean coining development has certainly made impressive gains, very impressive gains, since the Seoul Olympics coins, but that more recent history is left outside of the scope of the narrative for my research, since my research is mostly concerned with the early period of development of South Korean coinage. Also, it was from this early period of time from which emerged many of the coins that collectors consider to be the key dates of the South Korea series. And this concludes my presentation.